Welcome to Discover Midwives, the podcast where we explore the art, science, and impact of midwifery. I'm Jessica Brumley, and each episode we'll uncover the stories, the history, and the expertise of midwives. This is your space to learn, connect, and celebrate the power of midwifery. Let's discover midwives together. I am so excited that today on Discover Midwives, we have our guest, Ebony Marcelle. Ebony is the Director of Midwifery at Community of Hope, which includes Family Health and Birth Center. She completed her nursing education at Georgetown University and her midwifery education at Thomas Jefferson University, and received her doctorate in nursing practice at Frontier University. She is a fellow of the American College of Nurse Midwives. She's adjunct faculty at Georgetown University, and her advocacy work has included multiple congressional briefings, creating awareness around the need for policy changes to reduce maternity care disparities. She's known for her passion in midwifery and midwifery's role in reproductive justice. She's built a culturally aware clinical care models for under-resourced Black women, and she is an amazing mentor and friend to midwifery service directors everywhere. And so I am so happy to welcome Dr. Ebony Marcelle. Thank you for joining us on Discover Midwives.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I like to start with a story, and I think some of the best stories for midwives are really our own story in finding midwifery. I think everybody has some kind of path or calling, that brings them to this work. So I wondered if maybe you might share with our listeners your decision to become a midwife.
My midwifery origin story.
Mm-hmm. Your birth into midwifery.
Yes. So funny enough, right? You find out things so much later in life, but I actually was always just intrigued and obsessed with like pregnancy. Anybody that got pregnant in my family, I just, as early as like the age of 4 from nursery school, my mom's friend was pregnant and she was naming the baby Tariq. And I had a Tariq classmate. And in my mind, I thought that Tariq had shrunken down and went into her belly. But I was so fascinated that there was a baby in her belly. And so that just continued through life. And my first birth was at 16 with my niece. And I just loved it. And so I went to school. I was in Orange County, California, and then I went to a HBCU. Shout out to Morris Brown. And there wasn't a lot of folks in my family had not completed education. Some had started, but nobody had really completed college education. And so I got a couple of B's, and primarily because I was doing what most of us are doing, we're working. And so I thought I wasn't going to be able to go to medical school to be an OB. And so I tried to pick what would be somewhere close where I could get access to babies, and fell in love with developmental psychology. I got a bachelor's of science in psych and was teaching special ed high school, and was convinced I was going to be doing some work with neurodiversity. And then went for a GYN exam while I'm teaching high school, and also bartending, slinging drinks. But went for a GYN exam, and had this really, really just revolutionary experience. She followed me into the room. She was like, no, don't take off your clothes. And I was like, oh, okay. Because we all know about the paper gown and like sitting there and waiting after the nurse like checks you in. But I sat there with her, and she did this very detailed history. She was patient. She gave me a lot of time. I have a lot of medicine allergies, and just was really, really patient. And I was like, why is this experience so different? And she was like, oh, because I'm a midwife. And I was like, oh, well, what's a midwife? And I think I had the, visualization of how they kind of portray us when they're making fun of us on TV, like, women in the field wearing a long broom skirt and Birkenstocks. And so she explained to me how midwifery was founded in women empowerment and education and wanting to make sure folks were informed. And I went home that night and I was like, oh, I think this is it. And so, mind you, I had started the process. I had got accepted at a to a PhD program in the area to start in developmental psych. And this is the true thing, like probably a lot of people don't know. I was at a birthday party with like somebody's 90-year-old grandma. And, she was like, I see you got something on your mind. And I was like, I know. I was like, the more respectable thing is for me to do this PhD program, but like midwifery, I'm like falling in love with this, like what it is to be a midwife. And I feel like I'm supposed to be this midwife. But people will call me crazy, like, losing this opportunity at this really prestigious school. And she said, baby, you could be, 20 years in doing something you thought you liked, or 20 years doing something that you love. And that just locked it for me. And I was like, all right, I'm about to be a midwife. And there were people who were like, you are crazy, to to not do this PhD program. And it took me 7 years, which is always so interesting when I'm talking to people who just see the end point and don't know everything that went into it. And so, I had to take prereqs. I had to take prereqs to go to nursing school, then go to nursing school. And then I worked all that time while I was doing all those things. So sometimes I wasn't able to do it completely full time, but it took me 7 years to get to midwifery. But the day that I like legit, and I'm not talking about the times that I accidentally caught babies as an L&D nurse. It ain't the same. But the day I caught a baby as a midwife, midwifery student, I knew. I was like, oh, this is it. And it wasn't until I was doing my thesis that I was like, oh, I need to use my midwifery to be impactful for my community. So like pretty much that's my origin story. It was not my plan from like, some people are like, I've always known I want to be a midwife. No, it wasn't until later in life, but it definitely is the calling.
And you said, I'll repeat, that in your doctoral program, you realized that you could use midwifery to be impactful to your community.
Mhm.
But I feel like you've been doing that since you joined Community of Hope.
So no, no, no. So not my doctoral program, my
Oh,
midwifery.
okay.
My midwifery. So my everybody,
Oh,
we
your
I
thesis
went
for
to,
your
yes,
master's. Hmm.
you had to pick, quote unquote, like your thesis, right?
Hmm.
That's the comparison. And my classmates were doing water birth, piercings, and pregnancy. And here I come around the corner talking about infant mortality amongst African Americans. And bless her soul, Cindy Farley, love me some Cindy Farley, who in her very sweet Ohio way was like, are you sure? Because it was such a huge topic. And I think I jumped into it with the same misunderstanding that a lot of people had, which is like, oh, I'm going to do this research and I'm going to find out the answer to fix infant mortality amongst African Americans is just prenatal care. That's all they need. And when I tell you my mind was blown that it was
Mm.
decades of research and how racism and the different structures of racism, thinking about chronic stress weathering, it was then that I was like, okay, I feel like I still want to be a part of this scene, even as a midwife. And I think from that moment, I knew I definitely will probably never be a physician extender and be in private practice. That's not going to be my jam. My jam is always going to be focused on under-resourced, hopefully, Black birthing families.
Hmm. And that's what you do
Hmm.
at Community of Hope. And Community of Hope, for those people that don't know, has been around for a really long time.
Hmm.
But so you built on that very long legacy, but have really created something, like you breathe life, and have created something new. And so I wondered if you can't share, with our listeners, what is the kind of care that's provided at Community of Hope?
I will always argue that it's the best prenatal care in DC.
Mm.
Sorry, fair tip. But what the point is grounded in the foundation of trying to make sure that we are providing health and support and joy to Black birthing families. We are housed inside of this federally qualified health center. There's not a lot of federally qualified health centers. There's like 13,000 plus, and there's maybe five of us that have birthing centers. And of those five, some of us have had to take breaks of not being able to provide full scope. And so we are this unique model where we are able to provide out of hospital birth experience as well as hospital, but then also so much intentionality around our programming and how people engage with us. So like, you know, perinatal care coordination to how the perinatal care coordinators engage with them, what we're able to offer them as far as resources, being housed in an FQHC, having integrated emotional wellness that is accessible immediately on top of specialization in like addiction. Um, Having a location that's already a WIC site. So being able to say, hey, you didn't sign up for your WIC, cool, you could just go upstairs. Having a pharmacy that delivers. So many people love to have their prescriptions delivered to them. Um, we have home-based postpartum care. So, this came off of a grant, an idea of like, how can we improve postpartum care? And how can we stay engaged with families for that first year, not the first 6 weeks? So we co-designed this program with the community for what they asked us for. And so what it came out looking like is the first 12 weeks are home-based. And so the newborn visit, the weight check. A lot of people sleep on the fact midwives do newborn care. We can see our babies. And then we can do the 2 week for mom and the 5 week at home. And then we have peer-led support groups, classes, infant massage, baby wearing, um, and then rolling right into our family providers that continue pediatric care. And we have this like insane continuity. So I literally caught a baby last Tuesday of somebody that I caught her baby 16 years ago, and her birth support at the birth was her friend she met 16 years ago in group care.
Mm.
They're still buds and working together with their families. But like that kind of continuity is rare,
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
rare. And
Yeah, it
so
is.
having that kind of continuity, we're taking care of sisters. I'm having I like to call them my grandbaby catches. I'm taking care of the mom, now I'm taking care of the daughter. I have somebody that I've caught, four of her babies. Just that continuity. And so all is to say, I feel like with the community's involvement and listening to them and what they've told us, we've tried to create a program that is patient-centered, that is filled with convenience. There's always this like stigma that like poor people, especially poor Black folks, don't deserve convenience. Yes, they do. They deserve convenience. They deserve nice things. And so building this programming and this space to be convenient and supportive. Um, we've done a lot of work, and I'm not alone. I like to coin myself a thinker, an idea girl, but all this stuff has to get implemented. It has to get, supported for sustainability. And so I work with some really brilliant minds also like supporting me and like keeping this ship going, keeping it afloat. I have a really amazing CEO who I know, I've had a lot of jobs. I've been working since I was 14 years old. So I have a lot of CEOs that don't act like my CEO, like she isn't afraid to say racism. She isn't afraid to you know, say Black. She also has really been supportive in our creation, innovation.
Yeah, she's
and how
clearly
we're
not
trying to
not afraid of innovating.
know. And for those out and a lot of our systems, especially larger medical complex systems, there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of barriers. There's a lot of I like to coin this joke of like 7 people to tell me no. When I worked in a larger hospital system, there's always like, oh, we got to ask this person, then this person, then this person, this person. Then they all come back and say no. Um, so I feel really, really lucky and like clearly, I mean, I've been there now for 11 years. And please, please, I also want to acknowledge we are not perfect. We are not perfect. We have not done everything right. We've had to learn, we've had to grow. But I still feel just very privileged and very, honored to work for an organization that I've been able to support building this type of care.
I think that you've described listening to your community and really centering what they need and want, and how you have led as a midwife, how your understanding of the holistic approach to care, we need to build systems that support that, right? It can't be only the individual midwife that is providing a holistic approach to care, because that's just impossible for you to provide everything that an individual needs. We need an entire system. And for our listeners that are consumers of healthcare, right, seeking out practices that have what you need and asking for what you need, I think is a form of advocacy. One, it's beginning to introduce these ideas into communities or practices that haven't thought about different models of care. And it's also advocating for the individual and saying, this is what I need. I need a little more time. I need someone that looks like me. I need some convenience. And really making that heard in all of the ways, I think is, can be really powerful. I wanted to just focus a little bit on that postpartum care model that you've been putting a lot of energy and focus on. And
That's
so
my
I wanted,
jam.
yes, and I want you to tell people why is it so important, and why have you been innovating in this space?
So I will say, um, so you figure I've been a midwife now for 18 years, right? And I've worked in, larger settings and smaller settings. And I just always felt like we're just so terrible during the postpartum period. Like people would like have their baby and like I remember just even hearing patients say things like, that's it. Like I get you done with me, I don't have any other reason to come back in here. And then also gaining the understanding about how looking at our maternal mortality rates and how half of it is happening during the postpartum period, right? Where we have this like, for such a long time, it was just a 6-week visit, right?
Mm-hmm,
I think
mm-hmm.
midwifery has always believed in earlier postpartum care, but our overall standard used to be a sorry 6-week appointment.
And that's still
And
happening in a
so,
lot of places.
and so I will never forget, I was on this panel with the president of ACOG. Um, your girl being tables, girl. Sometimes I'd be like, how did I get here? Anyway, I'm at this table with the president of ACOG. This was a long time ago. And she was saying how ACOG is starting to explore the benefits of like earlier postpartum, care and, the bundles and everything. And I was like, that's funny. Like midwives have been talking about postpartum care, early postpartum care. We've been doing that. Like that's not new. Um, but let's have the conversation about what that is to implement that in these systems. So case in point, when I came to the FQHC, I got a lot of resistance from my CMO about doing early postpartum care. Like, oh, we're not going to get paid for it. And like, we just don't do that. And I was like, we have to. We have to. So, everything from creating a whole set of like CPT codes and ICD codes to make sure that we could like have a way to get people in to active defiance and ignoring. I'm good for that. And just getting people scheduled anyway was the start of me being like, I gotta dig into this postpartum period because like it's very neglected. And so from there, I created postpartum groups and, always coming at it from a very like systematic, pragmatic way of like, oh, I'm going to make these groups and like we're going to see a increase in like breastfeeding and we're going to see an increase in contraception, not realizing honestly from a reproductive justice standpoint how coercive contraception is during the postpartum period. But I really started it off with, well, selling it with, I'm going to increase breastfeeding success rates. Um, can I just tell you, my little project ain't do nothing. Okay, it didn't change. It did change. But what I learned from those groups is how there's such a lack of community in the
Hmm.
postpartum period, and like how those groups were great for people to get out and to fellowship with other families. It didn't change their mind about how they were going to breastfeed, if they were going to breastfeed. It didn't change their contraception, but it definitely was reported as something positive. And so, okay, then I started to think about these return rates. We seeing all these people taking care of them, have their baby, and then when she come back, she pregnant again. What happened to the in between, right? Why am I only seeing you again after you have the baby? Now you're pregnant again. So I started to think about like, oh, like I got to figure out what do people need to get them to come back. And that's when I started to gain a better understanding of like, oh, this is back to the systems piece. Why can't we give them an appointment ahead of time? Why, like everybody does this, like, oh, we only book out for like 4 days. And oh, we only have availability for like weeks. Why can't I, when she has this baby, give her her postpartum appointments? What does that look like with my front desk involved, with my MAs, how to create that, like, this is the standard and how we're going to engage with families in this postpartum period. And like, then it became, oh, let me make sure I got the baby's appointment scheduled. You know, it was just this crazy evolution. And so then finally, the home-based care, I had my own postpartum experience. I had a baby after being a midwife for 13 years. And I had her a week before lockdown during COVID. That's wild, right? So like all my like fantasies and joy about how this postpartum period was going to be, it was very isolated. We did this like, can you imagine doing telehealth and like trying to do it Edinburgh over telehealth? Are you really being honest? Like there were so many things in my postpartum experience that I was like, this is terrible. Um,
So for
that,
our listeners, the Edinburgh is how we screen for depression.
oh, I'm
And so,
sorry. Yes.
yeah, it's
My
okay.
bad. My bad. But
So, right. So, like, no, I can't imagine, right? I really can't. All I remember is how awful it was for everyone, but certainly for our new moms, right? On quarantine. I mean, we talk about not having community. Like, we did not have community during
did
COVID.
not.
So that really had to have intensified your experience as a new mom and in that postpartum period. It's just being
It did.
lonely.
It made me angry.
Mm,
And so one of my main kind of like collaborators, and I also like to call her one of my heterosexual life partners, one of my besties, also had a baby right after me. We were mad. So we wrote that grant fueled with postpartum is so neglected, and we just had these two terrible experiences. How can we, you know, create and reimagine and make things differently? And so like, just to answer your question, like it started probably like 2016 with me trying to figure out how I could get this system to engage in earlier postpartum care,
yeah.
understanding the data And like even now, like I think we're making progress, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Nowhere near.
I love how you focused on the experience. I will often say, what if? What if the experience was the outcome that we were measuring? Right? We worry about all these, like you mentioned, so many outcomes, breastfeeding, and and they're important things, but so many people just want to feel really great about their pregnancy and parenting journey. And if we really focused on that, I am certain everything else would follow.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is critical that people find that place, that person, that practice where they feel like their experience matters and their voice matters. That that is a priority, and if their voice matters, then the care will be solid care, right? You will receive the care that that you need. So since we're focusing on the postpartum period, I wondered how you encourage people to prepare for the postpartum period.
I encourage people to figure that out pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
One of my interventions with my doctoral program was um, trying to make this shared decision-making tool where it would engage conversation. That was called the postpartum brain benefits risk. And you know what was so interesting is so many people were like, "Oh, I have to think about that now." And I was like, it was actually like, oh, nobody thinks that they need to think about the postpartum period during the pregnancy and preparation and what that's going to look like. So, okay. So, gotta start having that conversation that needs to happen while you're pregnant. And more than like, more the traditional conversations of like, maybe you get stuff, right? Um, I started to tell people, put on your registry a postpartum doula. If you
Mm,
know about a postpartum doula and like how she can be supportive to you after you've had this baby, sometimes some people might benefit from the postpartum doula over the birth doula. So, bringing up that kind of conversation and like finding ways to get for people to have access to it. Um, we have a lot of folks who have pre-existing mood disturbances. So like, whether it be screening, whether about talking about it, like really trying to beef them up in preparation for the postpartum period. Um, yeah, like just really, really trying to hone in on more ways to have people thinking about it, preparing about it while they're pregnant.
yeah.
Not
I,
like
I I
at
often
39
start
weeks.
asking. I start asking people like, so who's gonna be there with you after you've had the baby, right? Does he get to take off of work? Because sometimes they get 3 days. That they have a partner that gets like 3 days off of work, and other times it's 3 months, right? Where's the family? Are they down the street or in another country? Can they come visit or are they not? Would they be helpful if they come visit, right? And what does asking for help look like for you? Right? We are so used to not asking for help. We miss independent. Okay, we got whole songs about it, right? We pride ourselves on how independent we are. And I'm like, right now, while you're pregnant, I need you to start practicing asking for help, right? Because you are really going to need help later.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so it's hard work, and people don't realize it. I remember I had an office manager, and she was going out on maternity leave, and she said she was going to do payroll while she was out on maternity leave. And I said, no, you are not. I need you to come up with a plan that is not
Right,
you doing payroll, because that is
right.
not going to happen. Yeah,
We definitely see people going back to work too early because out of need,
yeah, yeah,
um, and finances, and it's heartbreaking. I will also add that like through the years, other little nuances about siblings. I think about like my conversations about postpartum didn't always include like, all right, is this 2-year-old ready? You about to come home with
Hmm.
this whole baby, or your 6-year-old or 7-year-old? Like, what's that gonna look like?
Yeah.
With the transition with this new baby. Um, there's so much meat to be dug into with postpartum, like so much. And I just feel like more and more of us need to keep putting our heads together and like continue to build and listen to what people are telling us.
Yeah. So if somebody listening is a friend or a family member, how can they support someone in the early postpartum period? Because so often, what I hear is, we're coming to see the baby.
Yep. I love
Yeah.
that. Them and their germs. I'm just kidding. I always think about it too, because I feel like at baby showers, people always give you like a bunch of clothes when really like you need diapers, you need, all these different things. What I typically will say to my friends, as a matter of fact, I have a one of my good cousins, her son is expecting his second baby, and he's older, and he's got this, new partner, and she's lovely. And I've been talking to her a lot with the pregnancy. But things that I'm telling her look like, all right, so you guys should create some rules for who comes to visit this baby. Like, it can't be, we're just coming to see this baby. It's come drop off food. You may not see the baby. Come drop off food, come take some trash out, come wash some dishes, come clean some bottles, um, come drop off some diapers, set up a meal train because you think you're going to be able to think well postpartum, but you're not. And how nice it is when it's 6 o'clock and you get a text that dinner is arriving. Um, those are really the supportive things. And if you feel like you need more, think about what that doula can bring, whether it be just holding the baby so that you can take a shower.
Yes.
Um, you could take a really, really good nap. Also, girl, my pro tip, I give this to all my little mommies, my little
Tell me
pro
the
tip.
pro tip.
Girl, a 3 a.m. after feed shower.
Oh,
There's something magical about you've done that 3 a.m., 2 a.m., whatever feed. The house is quiet. Nobody needs anything from you.
mm,
And you can just get in that shower and take as long as you need.
mm,
Like, again, like moving away from maybe your like pre-pregnancy practices or you just got up in the morning and like no, girl, that's not your life for the baby. But that 3 a.m. middle of the night shower, get it. Pro tip, give that to you.
yes.
Um, but yeah, it really is talking about making rules. Not everybody can come over. And if they come over, stay for like a little bit of time so that folks are not stressed out. Oh, is the house clean? Do I have toilet paper in that bathroom? All those kind of things. And like bring food, bring all different variations of food, bring things that can be kept to eat later. Definitely. I had friends, Katie and Sydney. Katie and Sydney would come. They'd be like, she's cute. Let me go ahead and take this trash out.
Hmm.
You want me to walk the dog?
Yeah.
That to me is like great postpartum support from
I went
family.
to go visit a friend recently and I took empanadas because who doesn't like meat in fried dough?
Pastry,
And
yeah.
exactly right. And I fed her and then I held the baby while she took a shower and I folded laundry while she was in the shower. And then we chatted a little more. And I thought to myself, I'm going to take 12 weeks of FMLA when my daughter has a baby, and she's going to have to kick me out of the house. I'm going to do this every day. you know, but it was all the things I knew she needed. And that's it. I knew someone to talk to, in the middle of the day. You just got the baby for weeks at a time. Everyone's gone at work or school, all the things. But the other thing I would add is paying attention to the other little ones if you've got little ones at home, right? who's going to take that little one to the park or let them run their energy out so that way you can just focus on the baby. That's a great way, especially people or family who are close to your other children can support you during that time. Because that's
Yeah.
hard juggling the babies. Whew, that's really hard work. Um, You mentioned that the postpartum period is a time of great risk, right? For people, we have high, a lot of postpartum maternal morbidity and mortality. So people get sick, people die in the postpartum period.
Yeah.
What are the things? What are like the warning signs that people should be looking out for um, in that time frame?
Definitely the like, you know, kind of like the standard for preeclampsia. But, preeclampsia is a sneaky hoe. She don't always present exactly like textbook. So I have generalized it to like, if you feel off, you don't feel right.
Yeah,
There's no harm in you reaching out and we making a plan for me to
yeah,
see you. I have literally said to people, do you need me to just look at you? Come on in.
yeah,
Having that flexibility to be like, let's just come in. Let me look at you. Um, other things like when I first started training, blood pressure checks right after the baby were not a thing.
yeah. Right.
But really doing in-office blood pressure or home visit blood pressure checks those first couple of days, because that's also when the sneaky one likes to come. Matter of fact, I'm working on transitioning from hoe to midnight ballerina. When the midnight ballerina likes to come, that first week, right? She likes to return. Um, I like to also teach people that like outside of the preeclampsia, the hypertensive disorder, bleeding, right? Bleeding is always a sign that maybe you're doing too much. You may have had this like really powerful, quick labor. You feel great. You didn't have an epidural. It wasn't a long saga. And you'll move and do more. And your body's like, wait a minute, I really did just carry and have a baby. And I need some more time. So like paying attention to that bleeding and trying to take some cues of if it's picking up, let me lay down, let me nurse, and pay attention to see if it's, if it stops, if it doesn't, who I need to call, to having them palpate their fundus. Like, hey, you feel that? That should always feel like that ball. Rub and feel. Um, to just also things like, hey, your favorite movie is coming to America and you don't even want to watch it.
Mm,
How's your mood? Like, there's definitely, are you starting to feel sad? Are you not doing things that you were doing the previous weeks? To OCD is real, anxiety is real. I usually give the example of like, do you feel like nobody could change the baby's diaper right? Therefore, you're the only person that can change the diaper. Are you the only person that can feed the baby? Are you that's a lot of weight. And it's not sustainable.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we got to find ways for you to be okay to get support. I will commonly joke and use my husband and talk about how he put on Drew's diaper. And I was like, that is so wrong. But guess what? She didn't die. She might have leaked, but she
Yeah.
ain't die. So I'm going to let him keep putting on this diaper a little janky because it's going to give me a break.
And it's good for him. It is. It's good
Yeah,
for them to parent their children.
correct. So just, definitely we have the prevalence of hypertensive disorders. So we got to make sure we're having those conversations because it kills me every time I see a story of nobody told me that. Nobody told me that
Yeah.
headache. Nobody told me. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. Right.
So
Headache, blurred vision, spots in front of your eyes.
nausea, the
Yeah.
vomiting, that she's
Like
sneaky.
chest pain, sort of like right upper quadrant
Yep.
pain. Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
She's sneaky.
Yeah. And
Um,
and people are tired and people are like, I probably have a headache because I haven't slept for, consistently. But it's a thing to get checked out. I think honestly, I wish everybody just had a blood pressure cuff at home and that all insurances paid for it. I think that's advocacy that we can be doing. I do try and I talk to people and encourage people, to do that.
Sorry, top flight security. With drink package. My bad.
Yeah, so I think these are really important signs that people need to pay attention to, and not ignore. Do not ignore it. If in doubt, come in and get checked out. And that is that you should not you shouldn't question yourself. And the other thing I would say is go to your provider or go to where you birth. You're going to get the best care, unless you're really far from there. A lot of times, urgent care centers or freestanding emergency rooms aren't used to caring for pregnant people or people who are immediately postpartum. And so they may not be as in tune to the things that we know can be red flags during that time frame.
That's also the benefit too about like continuity is that like
Yes.
if it's somebody that I know, I could say, you know what? Hey girl, I just saw you last week. You looking a lot different than you did last week. I'm seeing you look a little bit more puffy. I don't remember your legs looking like that. You acting like you don't feel good. Like that's another reason why it's great to have that continuity.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. This has been so great. All right, one last question. Do
Sure.
you have any like favorite resources, books, websites, anything that you share with folks to help them, in their postpartum period and parenting, anything in that time frame?
Now, now that you asked me, I'm not gonna remember nothing. I know as soon as we hang up this call, I'm gonna remember a whole bunch. Um, no, like I feel like I can't think of anything specifically that I'm like, oh, this is where I tell people to go. There's so many apps and everything these
Yeah.
days.
Hmm.
And it
Hmm.
depending on your community, some communities are with it, some communities are not.
Yeah.
But I'm like, most of the time, like if it's an app, it's gonna be somewhat vetted and likely is gonna give you like good information and they're helpful to have like access. Oh, you know what I actually will recommend? Pacify.
Oh,
It's the
Pacify.
lactation. They got a
Uh-huh.
24-hour, so like that 3 a.m. feed, something's going on. Definitely love Pacify. Um, for a cultural, you got Mama Shafia's book if you want to tap into some of your cultural practices for the postpartum period. Um, yeah, I think those are my like top ones I can think of right now off the top of my head.
Okay.
Sorry.
Wonderful. That's
Those
great.
enough? Oh, okay.
Yes. Thank you. All right. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with this. You deserve care that listens to you, respects you, and includes you in every decision about your body. If something in today's episode resonated with you, I encourage you to write it down, talk about it with someone you trust, or bring it with you to your next healthcare visit. Information is powerful, but using it is where change begins. If you found this episode helpful, you can follow or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Sharing this episode helps more people learn about their options and what respectful maternity care can look like. Thank you for spending time with us. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you here next time. Discover Midwives was brought to you by the American College of Nurse Midwives. To find a midwife in your community, go to midwife.org.